All right, good afternoon. Happy Tuesday to everybody. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast. And today we have a special guest. 15 years ago, at age 61, Rick Kahdeman was in a job or a career that owned him time-wise and took so much of his time that he had no time for anything else, like giving his family the time that they deserve from him as a husband and a dad to his 3-year-old twins. He was also obese, diagnosed as pre-diabetic, and the onset of cardiovascular disease in the form of extremely high blood pressure and extremely high bad cholesterol, and on a fast track to an early death. In his legal professional career, Rick had his own law firm and was a litigation attorney specializing in constitutional law, mortgage banking, real estate, and business and banking law. But 14 years ago, at age 62, when their twins were just 4 years old, Rick and his wife, Luisa, left their successful legal profession careers in 2008 to co found Achieving Health, their international health practice, which specializes in helping people prevent and reverse chronic diseases using the number one doctor recommended health program in America. Rick, that's an amazing introduction. I'm happy to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you, Jason. It's a privilege and honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's kind of jump right in, and guys, if you're watching this live right now, you may notice there's a slight lag in our internet connection, but we're gonna make do like we always do and have some fun with this interview. But Rick, can you tell us about that decision that you made 14 years ago to change your life?
Well, it was an accidental introduction to the opportunity. As you mentioned in the introduction for me, I was a busy lawyer. My wife was a busy court reporter, and we were successful at what we did. That's why we were busy, and that busy translated to 85 hours a week for me, and 65 hours a week for her. And when we were married, we decided we wanted to have children. And we knew that our successful legal careers, in terms of the time that each of those careers demanded of us, was going to require a change. We didn't know what or how that would happen, but we went ahead and had the kids anyway. Figuring we'll figure it out. Well, we didn't do a very good job of figuring that out because the kids were 3 years old, as you mentioned in the introduction, when I was 61. And we had no clue what we could do that would give us time. Time was our currency that we needed. And if we could find something that would allow us to at least maintain the nice lifestyle we have been able to generate as successful legal professionals, that would be great. But we wanted time, and we had no answer to that. We found nothing that would give us that opportunity. Then life intervened, as sometimes it does, and creates circumstances that reveal things that we otherwise wouldn't see. And what happened was, as you mentioned, I was 50 pounds overweight. I was pre-diabetic. I had the onset of chronic diseases that were going to cause me to not be around when my kids were 16. It was time to teach them how to drive, let alone be there when they graduated from high school. And I got that nice wake-up call from my doctor. I felt fine. But when my kids were 3, I knew being 50 pounds overweight, even though I had no symptoms of any kind that would give me a smoke detector, that would give me a signal that something's really wrong. You got to go to get this checked out. I just did it as a sense of responsibility, knowing that I could probably be healthier, but I didn't know what the was. And so I went to the doctor, and that's when I found out that I was pre-diabetic and had high cholesterol and extremely high blood pressure. And when he looked at my numbers, he said to me, he said, you could die at any minute of a stroke or heart attack with that kind of blood pressure. And he said, I want you to lose 50 pounds. And he said, I don't care how you do it. Go find a diet that works for you. And I want you back here in a couple of months, and I want to see at least 20 pounds off. Well, what happened was that Luisa and I got lucky, and we found the plan we now coach by accident because some friends of ours had visited our house 2 weeks after I visited the doctor. And we hadn't seen them for quite a long time. And when they walked through the door, they were half the size we remembered them to be. Now, not only was I suffering from being obese, but my wife was still carrying 30 pounds of baby weight 3 years after the kids were born. And now Luisa, who you know, she's a gym rat and a marathon runner, and she could not get those 30 pounds off. So we looked at our friends and said, whatever you're doing, we're doing that. You got results. It works. We'll do that. It turned out to be the program that we coach. But the bottom line was we not only lost our weight in a remarkably short period of time, it was 15 years ago. And it's still off. And that's the difference between this program that we stumbled on by accident and diets. And it's not a weight loss program. It's an optimal health program that a doctor created in 2001. And we knew nothing about it till we ran into our friends. But it got us healthy in the best possible way in terms of our weight loss, and it corrected my cholesterol, corrected my blood pressure issues, and I felt like $1,000,000. But I wasn't seeing my kids because 85 hours a week meant I was up at the crack of dawn, watching my children sleep. That was my life as a dad. And if I was lucky enough not to be out of town on a week or two trial, I got to see them maybe 5 hours or 5 days a week for an hour and a half before they went to bed. Not my idea of the dad that I wanted to be and dad I wanted to experience. And what's more, Luisa was having her own struggles because she was turning those kids over to the nanny and coming home after a long day as a court reporter and listening to the nanny share with her how wonderful her children were. It was, you can imagine, that's not a fun thing for a mom. So anyway, bottom line, what happens with our coaches, as we were interacting with them, we had a relationship with them as our coaches, and they had discovered and knew about our circumstances. And they said, why don't you look into the coaching, this program that we coach that you just got healthy on? And I said no to that suggestion for 2 years, from 2007 to 2009. And in 2009, I was at such the end of my rope when my kids were 5 of not being available to them, let alone not getting my own personal experience from my kids growing up, but not being available to them as a fully present dad. I decided I would check it out, if only to rule it out. In other words, I didn't want to go down life's highway another 2 years and wondering if that was the off ramp I missed just because I was too proud to look. And so I went with an open mind, admittedly a very tiny open mind, because I figured it wouldn't be for me. I was wrong. I spent 2.5 days, Luisa and I spent 2.5 days in 2009 at a conference for this company. And we walked out of there and looked at each other and said, we just found a new career. So when you introduced me as the co-founder of Achieving Health, we're independent contractors with this company. So we have our own business, and that's the name of it, is Achieving Health. But what we do was already created for us. It was already done. All we had to do was learn the skill sets and master the coaching skills the company taught us to do. And we built an international health practice from that. So now, Luisa, in a year from the time we started that, was able to come home and be a full-time stay-at-home mom. And at that point, I started closing my law firm because that's what I wanted, to be a stay-at-home dad. And within 22 months from that point, my law firm was closed. I came home when my kids were 7, just going on 8 years. They're 18 now. So I got to be at home with them, full-time dad, stay-at-home dad for 10 years.
Awesome. Well, let me jump in for just a second because, most people that listen to this now or may listen to this later, if they heard the introduction that, you were a successful attorney, you had a successful firm, you financially, I'm sure, stable and strong. You had everything that most people would think of as successful, but you were lacking. You were lacking that time with your kids, watching them grow up. Your own lifestyle was suffering for the sake of quote unquote success. How hard was that decision to make, really? Because I know that there's some back and forth, and you had to weigh your options. And what was the final straw that made you make that decision?
Well, the final straw first of all, I was desperate for time. I was desperate for being available to my kids and letting them have a dad that was fully present for them in some way, much more than I was available in our successful legal careers. And so we were both willing, if we found the right vehicle, to jump off the legal profession area. That was not a question, but would we find something that would work for us? And it took us going to that conference and finding out the details of the structure of this business model and how we would be compensated as coaches, that caused us to believe and understand that we can do this. It's just a matter of deciding to do what we did when we went to the legal profession, learn the skills and apply them. And if we did that the way that was designed by the company to do that, the success would come. It wouldn't be a question of if, it would be a question of only when. And we had that kind of confidence in it and in ourselves in terms of willing to master the skills and abilities of a new career. And we saw that in that business model, that if we did that, it could happen in a real relatively short period of time. It wasn't
Hmm.
like we would have to spend 15 years building a business before it became to the point where we were able to match, at least equal, if not exceed, what we've been able to create in our legal profession careers.
Well, great, good for you, and a really hard decision, but sounds like it is the best decision, a great decision that you made in your life. Hey guys, if you're watching this live or you're listening to this later, my name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Show. We're talking with Rick Kahdeman about going from being a very successful attorney to making a life change, to have some more time with his kids, to have a career that he could support his family and still have that time, and co-founding Achieving Health. So that's what we're talking about now. And talk about when you came out of that conference, right? You spent a couple days at the conference. You came out and you said we found a new career. What were some of the initial steps that you took to transition your careers in your life?
Well, one of the major points that was a motivator for us to choose this is, first of all, you have to understand that I had my health transformed by one of the programs that this company provided. I mean, literally, I went from a man who was going to die early to someone who's now 76, and I've got the blood pressure. In fact, my doctor does my blood work. I go every year, and he looks at my blood work. And last year, when I went was 75, he said, "Rick, if I didn't know I was looking at your blood work, I'd swear I'm looking at the blood work of a healthy 35-year-old man."
Hmm.
And that's what we get to do for other people. And so this wasn't a change for us that was only motivated by an opportunity for us to have time and financial freedom, which it did. That was important. But it was something that was meaningful that we could do and bring real value to people's lives because we'd experienced it personally. And to be able to pay that forward and be compensated for it in a reasonably attractive manner,
Hmm.
uh, that would give us the time freedom that we were desperate for, because that's what we wanted. We wanted that time freedom, and to be able to do something with meaning and purpose on top of that,
Hmm.
then it was a given. And a lot of people have asked me over the years, and you may be thinking the same thing. Was it hard for you as a successful lawyer to leave that career you built over 35 plus years? And the answer was not at all,
Hmm.
because my family life was more important to me. My identity wasn't wrapped up in what I did for a living.
I think this is really important for a lot of people that might be on the fence in this very same situation, because we strive in our youth or in our young adulthood to find that career path, to find that passion, to find what we want to do, and then we get into it, and we're making a living, we're making a life, we're um, you know creating and building that career. But when it's not fulfilling and satisfying to your core, that change of careers is, like you said, it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard for you to make that decision, because in your core you knew, even if you were to sacrifice the financial freedom, or making the amount of money that you were making, again, just assuming that. But it wasn't all about that. It was about the family. It was about that time, that really made your decision. Now, listen, guys, if you're watching this video, by the way, and you're looking at Rick and going, how in the world is he 76? I mean, I see you in person, but I see you on screen, and there's no way you look 76 years old. I mean, you look, and you've got the energy of a much younger person that I would think of at 76. So to me, it's just inspiring right off the bat that at 76 years old, we can have that health, we can have that energy, we can have that passion and enthusiasm for what we do, not just in our career, but as far as a lifestyle. Because like you know what you do is a lifestyle. What I do, martial arts, is a lifestyle. And some people don't necessarily understand what an impact, the things that you do day in and day out affect your lifestyle, and overall affect your health. Now, what I want to talk about is, I want to talk about what are some of the changes that you made health wise, right off the bat coming out of the program. What were some of the most simple things, and then what were some of the things that were a little bit harder that took a little more work?
Okay, that's a good question, Jason, and there's a lot of pieces to the answer to that question. First of all, I learned when as a client on this program that the reason this program will work for you, Rick, the reason it works for everybody who follows it, is that it was designed by a doctor to be a natural non-drug way to treat the causes of
Mm-hmm.
obesity and chronic diseases, because those two things are caused by the same things going on in the body that can be corrected by lifestyle changes. And what do I mean by that? Specifically, what I learned, this is what I learned as a client, is that you have got out of control chronically elevated blood sugar and blood insulin levels. Fundamentally, in our bodies, if we don't get those two elements, those two things under control, we're going to have a lifetime of chronic disease, and it's going to manifest in each of us differently. But those two elements, if left unchecked, are what contributes to us to gaining fat. We don't gain weight. We talk about weight, but our muscles don't get bigger and our organs don't get bigger. Our body is a fat factory if we allow those two elements to get out of control. Because what
Mm-hmm.
happens is, and this is all I learned as a client, and so from my coaches, is that Rick, this program by changing your eating habits, by showing you how to eat properly for the right combination of the macronutrients of protein, carbs, and fats, you put those in the right combination, in the right order, in the right frequency throughout the day, you will get those blood sugar and blood insulin levels back to normalized levels. And when you do, you shut off the fat factory, number one, and number two, the elements that are caused by those elevated levels in your body are going to start reversing, because your body is built to heal itself. Think about this, Jason. You and I and everyone listening to this broadcast have seen a cut on our arm heal. We've watched
Mm-hmm.
it. We scrape our hand, we get a cut. We watch it. We watch the body heal that. That's what the body is designed to do. Now, what if though? What if while that body is working its normal stuff to heal that cut, we took our fingers from our other hand and started prying that apart and just prying that cut apart? Would the body succeed in healing that cut? The answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because we're interfering with the body's process that it's designed to do to heal itself when it has those kinds of injuries. Now, think about that going on in the inside of your body. When you've got chronically elevated blood sugar and blood insulin levels, you're doing the same thing to the inside of your body. You're overcoming the body's ability to correct itself by constantly pouring into your mouth the things that will create the chronically elevated blood sugar and blood insulin levels. Now, does that make me a bad person? Does that make anybody listening to this who's suffering from those diseases and obesity a bad person? No, it doesn't. We are in a food culture that contributes, whether we like it or not, to making it easy for us to become unthinking and have habits of disease, really, in terms of how we choose to live our lives, especially about how we eat. Now, I'm 76, so guess what? I grew up in the 50s. And in the 50s and early 60s, there were no obese people in this country. They didn't exist. You look at the Woodstock films
Mm-hmm.
uh, from 1969, or you look at any of the old TV shows, there aren't fat people on there. Why? Because we didn't have a fast food joint on every corner. And
Mm-hmm.
is fast food bad for you? Not if you eat it in a right way, in terms of not making it your mainstay for how you eat, because the food industry knows how to cause our body to want more of what they offer. For example, when we ingest sugar in a refined sugar in a you name it, a blast, a blizzard from DQ or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
our brain lights up in the same area that it lights up when we take cocaine. Food is an addictive substance, especially the refined foods, refined flours, refined sugars, and things. I didn't know any of this. I was just eating like I always ate as a kid growing up, a skinny kid that never gained weight because my metabolism could outrun my fork. But once I turned 40, as happens to all of us, our bodies change, our metabolisms change, and our habits don't. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened, how I gained 50 pounds, and how most of us at 40 seems to be a trigger time for virtually everyone for starting to gain weight. Why is it? I've turned 40 and now I'm packing on the pounds and I can't get them off. It's because our body starts to operate differently metabolically.
Hmm.
And I didn't know any of that. I grew up in the Midwest. I was a biscuits and gravy and steak and potatoes kid, and I ate lots of it, and I could because my metabolism was chewing it up, but not when I turned 40. But I kept eating that way. And when fast food came along in my life, like everyone else, guess what? I'm going there too, and I did. And I love food, and we all do. We don't want to admit that food is an addiction, or because it internally it seems like a sign of weakness to us. But the reality is, if any one of us is deprived of food long enough, we'll be out in the woods gnawing bark off a tree, because our body demands it. And so it's not like alcohol or pharmaceutical drugs that people can get addicted to, because we can't live without food. We can live without alcohol. We can live without drugs. And however we might find a system that will help us release ourselves from whatever addiction we might have from that, our body's going to demand that we get food. And so then the question becomes, can I learn? Is it possible to learn how to eat food in the right way that will allow that cut on the inside of my body to heal, will allow that fat to stop being produced? Because in terms of what we eat, we only need 125 grams. I don't care if you're a 400-pound guy or a 125-pound guy. 125 grams of carbohydrates a day is about all your body needs to produce the glucose. That's what the body does. It takes what we eat, converts everything, but principally the carbs, to glucose. And that's the gasoline that runs our engine. That's how we go. And the body needs that. But we can only store and use about a 3-day amount of glucose. And when we continually eat day after day after day in a way that produces massive amounts of glucose, the body will use what it needs, and it will store the rest as fat. That's the fat factory that I was referring to. So
Hmm.
what this program helped me learn, was how to consume food in a way that I could regulate how much glucose was being produced. And that way I would stop gaining fat. And then if I regulated the caloric intake properly and still managed that glucose, that what's called a glycogen store, properly, I would reduce that gas tank low enough that by day 4, there's not enough glucose to run the engine. And what happens when the body loses weight? It cannibalizes itself. If I'm a 20-pound guy like I was 15 years ago, and I needed 2,200 calories a day just to maintain that, which is a good rule of thumb, 10 times our body weight is
Hmm.
what we need. If I decided, well, I know how to lose weight, I'm going to eat less. I'm going to eat only 1,200 calories. We all know that. So what happens when I decide to only eat 1,200 calories, but my body needs 2,200? It cannibalizes itself to get those extra 1,000 calories every single day, and will cannibalize muscle tissue, and will cannibalize organ tissue, and it'll cannibalize the fat, but it'll get there last. What makes our program healthy in terms of losing weight? We only lose fat, because what the company found was the solution to help people like me learn how to fuel our bodies in a way that would feed the muscle tissue properly, feed the organ tissue properly, and allow the body to only attack the fat when it cannibalizes itself for weight loss. And weight loss is only one thing we do. We have multiple protocols for people who have nothing to do with weight loss, but they're not healthy, and they need to deal with those issues too.
Hmm.
All around the issue, every one of them, autoimmune diseases, type 1 diabetes, you name it, are all affected negatively by an imbalance in the levels of glucose and insulin.
Well, I've got a couple questions, and those of you that are watching right now, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments so that I can ask them for you. And thank you to the Facebook user that was letting us know that soon to be 57 attests to everything that you're saying here. And thank you to Roseanne Azatot for checking in again. She was watching yesterday. My questions for you are: number one, what are some of the most common foods that you would recommend immediately cutting out or severely cutting down that would make the most impact?
Okay. Well, let's talk about the foods that are the ones that principally have the carbohydrates that the body uses to convert to glucose, because that's what I was sharing with you. And so the most common foods that have high amounts of sugar and or carbohydrates that the body uses to convert to glucose are fruits, which are not bad, but they can be part of it, how they're consumed can cause an overproduction of glucose. But the others are vegetables like potatoes, carrots, peas. Those are the kind of things, breads, grains, and especially because those breads and grains are made with refined flour, they are jam packed with carbohydrates. And if we consume those excessively day in and day out, which I did, which most of us do because they taste so darn good, we're going to produce a lot of glucose. So then it becomes, we hear all the time that there's a whole lot of advice out there that much of it is correct about how to eat better that will help you manage your glucose, lower your glucose, eat fewer carbs. You hear that all the time, and that's fine. But how do you do that? How do you do it in a way that's measured so precisely so that you know you're getting exactly what you need every day and still getting to eat the food you like? That's the key. And that's what diets don't answer for us. They're strictly calories in and calories out.
Hmm.
And
Well,
without
so
any what's in the calories that are going in.
mhm. So you mentioned whether you're 125 pounds or you're 400 pounds, your body really only needs 125 grams of carbs per day. Is that, did I quote you correctly on that?
Yeah, give or take in that area, that's what we need.
And try, if you could, just to give me an idea of what would be an appropriate intake in any given day. Maybe list some things for breakfast, lunch, dinner. If you're just focusing on the three meals, what would be the the best possible carbs to choose from to be eating with each meal?
Well, everything has got carbs in it. The question is how much. And one of the things that this program helped me learn is number one, it's best to fuel your body. We all know this, by the way, to eat frequent, properly proportioned meals frequently throughout the day. Properly portioned, properly balanced, nutritionally balanced meals frequently throughout the day. So what this program taught me to do, and what every one of our protocols teaches everyone else to do, is how to fuel your body every 2.5 to 3 hours you're awake. And for most of us, that'll be 6 times a day. Now, what that's broken down into is depending on what protocol you're on, whether you want to lose weight, how fast you want to lose it, how much you want, how much you want to lose of fat.
Hmm.
It will determine how many whole food meals you eat as during that 6 times a day, as opposed to smaller fueling breaks that'll still feed your body properly and give you the calories you need and the proper balance of the macronutrients that you need. So that being said, the best meal to eat, whole food meal to eat, would be cooked weight, 5 ounces of red meat, 6 ounces of poultry, turkey or chicken, cooked weight, 7 ounces of non-fatty fish, like shellfish, things like that, cooked weight, combined with 3 servings of vegetables. And the servings size will depending on what kind of vegetable it is. For example, a serving of salad greens of any of the salad types would be a half a cup. So 3 servings is a cup and a half. But non lettuce type of vegetables, green vegetables, 3 servings, a serving is a cup. So 3 servings would be 3 cups. You combine those two things together, that's the healthiest thing you can give yourself to eat. And you do not have to eat red meat. You do not have to be a meat eater. You can be a vegetarian to get your protein that I just described in those categories from plant-based sources as well. So as a vegetarian, you can do the same thing. Just replace the protein levels that are available in 5 ounces of cooked weight red meat, for example, that might be
Hmm.
available in tofu or whatever it is you like that provides a protein source. In
All
fact,
right.
the doctor that created this program really, his ideal for us is to eat plant-based everything. But that doesn't mean you will defeat your success in getting healthy if you
Hmm.
don't eat just vegetarian.
So Roseanne is watching, and she's asking because she lost 50 pounds. Is it Optiva?
It's
Is that what we're
Optavia. Yes, it is. It's
Optavia?
Optavia. Right.
All right.
Yes, it
Very
is.
cool. Well, thanks for checking in on that, Roseanne. Anybody else, guys, if you have questions, now is a great time to ask. I know Rick is more than happy to share more information. Your questions help us keep talking about this. My next question for you would be, what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
Um, it works. Keto works. Pagan diet works. Paleo diet works. Weight Watchers works. They all work, but none of them, that's just a diet, are sustainable for a lifetime.
Hmm.
You can do intermittent fasting and you'll get the results you want over the short term you want. But think about this. We're fasting when we sleep. We're fasting when we sleep. And in fact, healthy sleep is one of the important lifestyle elements that is very important for us to master and part of what we teach and help our clients learn, because that's when the body does the work of healing and when it burns more fat while you're sleeping, believe it or not, than when you're running up a hill and
Hmm.
you're jogging during the day. Because think about this, one of the phrases that I learned as a client was that healthy sleep is nature's nurse. That's where the body does that healing I was referring to. And if we don't sleep well, then we are interrupting the body's ability to do what it's designed to do. And so fasting is built into our bodily function because we have to sleep every day. We don't have a choice. We're
Hmm.
going to go down eventually. And then if we can do it in a way that's healthy and allow us to get anywhere from 6.5 to 8.5 hours of good restful sleep during the night, which is part of the lifestyle elements that we help people master along with healthy eating. Um, that's really important. So fasting, yeah, it works, but
Okay.
it's still another way of just interrupting the cycle of putting calories in our mouth. What's in the calories we do put in, that's the key.
Got it. Well, your wife is watching, and she's asking a question. Is it important to keep your insulin levels down? And talk about. I'm sure the answer is yes, and why, and how.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. She knew it was when she asked.
Yeah, I know she did.
And you heard me say at the beginning about normalizing blood sugar and blood insulin levels. Why is that? Well, when you insulin levels go up in response to having elevated glucose levels, it's the way our body works. It's just automatically built in like breathing. So when our glucose levels go up because of what we eat, too much of that produces too much glucose, the pancreas recognizes that and produces insulin. And insulin rises within the body. But why does that matter? Because why does the body think it's necessary? Well, it is necessary in the sense that the insulin is a hormone that opens the gateways in the cells of our bodies that lets the glucose in. If the glucose is going to be used, it has to get into the cells. It cannot get into the cells just because it exists. Insulin is the key that unlocks the gateways to the cells that lets the glucose in. So insulin's a good thing. But when it's elevated chronically, like glucose, it can be a bad thing over time. Why is that? Insulin is a primary inflammatory hormone, and it's there to do its job in a number of other ways, other than in addition to opening the gateways to the cells. But if our body is running at chronically elevated insulin levels, guess what we've got? Chronic inflammation in the body. Why should I care about that? Because that insulin is the trigger that converts the excess glucose to fat, number one. But more importantly, being an inflammatory hormone, it can create and trigger a whole host of other chronic conditions, including autoimmune disorders, because now your autoimmune system is put on full alert running at 700 RPMs all day long. And it's not
Hmm.
supposed to do that. And that's part of the example of prying the cut open. If we let our body run at a chronically inflamed level every day by having high insulin, that's going to cause damage to the body. Now, that's not the only way we can have inflammation in our body, but it's the primary way that gets caused by what goes in here. We get that under control, then we can start dealing with the other things that also cause inflammation and stress to the body, which when stress happens, that releases a whole host of other hormones that have negative effects on our health.
So, true or false? Calories in minus calories out, or you know, can we? I think you know where I'm going with this, right? Is weight loss equal to more calories burned than calories coming in? Is that a true statement?
Well, I will only take issue with you with the use of the term burned. Okay, a calorie is not a thing. It's a unit of measurement. It's like an inch. How many inches does it take to make a foot? 12. Well, calories are just a way of measuring how hard the body is working at creating energy, and what it's using that energy for determines the effect on the body. So that and it's been used by the medical community properly to be able to measure how much food, how many calories will certain foods produce or a certain amount of food produce, how much do you need in your body. And the bottom line is that that calorie knowledge that we have is helpful in understanding if I eat fewer calories or if I burn more calories by ramping up my metabolism, which will use up that energy more quickly. And by the way, in case people don't know this, anybody who's a marathon runner knows this, is that what do marathon runners do immediately before a marathon? They carbo load. And the reason they do is because that's energy. That's going to produce more, not more calories. It's going to produce more glucose. The glucose is the energy. It's not the calories are not energy. It's the glucose that's the energy. So the calories are only useful for measuring what am I going to create inside my body in terms of energy and nothing more. Having said that, I mentioned earlier that my 220-pound body needed 2,200 calories a day just to maintain that weight, because our body needs the energy that 2,200 calories in general produce. But you're familiar with a BMI chart, right, Jason? Jason, you know
Yes.
what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people know that, but why does that matter? Why does it have value? The reason it has value is that over decades, that chart represents the science of weight gain, being overweight for your height, to risk an existence of chronic disease. And the reality is that the reason they have that there, in a way, doctors look at you and me when we go to them and they say, well, Rick, you're 5'10" and you weigh 220 pounds. You need to get down to the green range. And that would make you need to get down to 170 at least. And why does he say that? Because he knows that if I stay at 220, my risk and virtual certainty of having chronic diseases of some kind, more than one, is a reality. And that what that breaks down to is that when doctors came to me, my doctor came to me and said, Rick, you need to lose 50 pounds. He was absolutely right, because he knew that there would be a positive effect. If I ate less, guess what? I'd be producing less glucose. I'd be ingesting fewer carbohydrates. And so therefore I would be producing less glucose, and there would be a positive effect on my body. He didn't know how much, but they do know, as a general rule of thumb, if we are not at a healthy weight based on a BMI chart, give or take a few pounds, and we need to lose weight, if we lose 10% of our body weight, just 10%, we reduce our risk of chronic disease by 50%. That's huge. So weight loss in general, by any method, is beneficial. Then it becomes, are some not healthy if I do that forever, or can I do them forever? If you only do them for a short period of time, probably not long term. But if you do that for the rest of your life, which most people can't, they're not going to be healthy for you. But what if I could lose weight and still feed my body completely exactly the way it needs to be fed, even with reduced calories? That's the magic. That's when the magic happens.
Got it. So the original question, true or false? Um, Luisa saying definitely false, and that seems to be what you're saying, is that the weight loss is not always equal to calories in, calories out, solely based on the
Right.
numbers.
See, what you just experienced from me versus my wife, Jason, is that I'm an ex-lawyer. I can't say anything in one word.
Well, I appreciate the explanation. Now, you brought up BMI, and man, I don't think I've ever in my life, and I'm an athlete, and I work out. Doesn't mean I'm necessarily totally healthy and free of all risks of things going wrong. But I have a hard time understanding BMI, and really, to be honest, really believing that is the go-to, to use as a chart for yourself. What
It,
are your
it,
thoughts on that?
it's intended to be a generalization to help us know where we need to be, that would be overall best for us. Now,
Hmm.
someone like yourself who is an athlete, and bodybuilders, their ratio of body fat to muscle tissue is a lot more advanced in a positive way than people like me who don't do that. My body mass index only talks about the relationship of height to weight and nothing more.
Hmm. Right.
Doesn't take into consideration the body fat ratio that exists from individual to individual. And does that matter? Yes, it does. But the reality is the medical community knows that your body and my body and everyone else's body has some variations to it. We may all act generally the same,
Hmm.
but once it gets down to certain details, how those changes and how we behave, eating, being active and exercise, will manifest themselves in different ways. Most of them positive if we do the right things. But the body mass index says it give us a place to go, a goal to go toward. It doesn't mean that if you are in the yellow zone and not the green zone, meaning you're overweight in the overweight category, doesn't mean you're not healthy, but it means you're healthier than if you're in the high end of the yellow zone or in the red zone, which is obese. But what that means, that's what the BMI chart does not tell us. And
Hmm.
so it's only intended to be a guide to be where you should be heading toward. And then when you get down to certain areas of what you like to do, like in your case, being an extreme athlete, very, very active, and other people who are extreme athletes, that's when they can fine tune it the way they want to and still get the benefits, even if they're not completely in the green zone on the BMI. Guideline chart only.
Perfect. Well, that's a great explanation for everybody. We're getting close to the end of our time. I just want to remind everybody, if you're still watching live and you have questions now, please post those in the comments. Would love to add to a little bit more of our conversation. But we've talked a lot about healthy habits and weight loss and calories, and we've talked about all of that, but we really haven't gotten to know a whole lot more about Mr. Rick Kahdeman. So if I can just ask you a couple more questions, just on a personal level, where did you grow up? You're 76 years old, so you've got a lot more life experience than myself and many of people watching. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what life was like as you were growing up, some good memories that you have as a young adult or a young child.
Okay.
Just anything you're willing to share there.
Okay, I'd be happy to. I grew up in Missouri. I actually lived in the suburbs in the metropolitan area of St. Louis, Missouri. So in that respect, you might think, well, Rick grew up as a city boy. No, I did not. My grandmother owned a 300-acre farm in central Missouri, and my family spent as much time on that farm as we did in the suburbs of St. Louis. And my parents were very modest in terms of their economic income. My father was a very skilled blue collar tradesman, and we had a nice life. In fact, the best way I describe it, considering when you think about me growing up in the 50s, I can honestly say that the best way to describe my childhood was I was the beaver. That's that. If anybody who knows about the show Leave It to Beaver, that's that's basically the life I had if you add the farm element to it. And it was like issue free, like many kids' lives are, but in the context of the 50s and farm life and that kind of thing. So I grew up, went to school like most people do, went to public school. In ninth grade is when I got the bug to be a lawyer. And it happened in ninth grade because I remember us taking a civics class and they were explaining about the Constitution. And for whatever reason, the teacher teaching that class caught my attention with the way he did that. And I became fascinated with that. And then remember, I'm growing up in the 50s and 60s. And what was the main law show on TV? Perry Mason. And so I'm getting inundated every week, with Perry Mason. I'm thinking, well, that seems cool. Now, I knew nothing about being a lawyer, knew nothing. All my total exposure was what I learned in high school, American Revolution, American history, and that civics class, and seeing Perry Mason on TV. Like, that looks pretty cool. I think I want to do that. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know how to do it, other than I knew I had to go to school, and that's it. So that took me forward to making sure I was going to go to college. And because I was going to be learning a skill in college, my skilled father, who was a skilled tradesman, was okay with that because I was going to learn a skill, not getting just a liberal arts degree. And so I was following a path of education. Everything became following a path of education to get into law school, get through law school. Now, here's where I got lucky in my life. The Vietnam War happened. And when I started college in 1964, the Vietnam War was just really beginning to ramp up big time. And the law in this country in 64 was that everybody who attended a public university had to belong, every male had to go to Reserve Officer Training Corps. That's why I did that. It was voluntary to the expect that the Army couldn't take you, but you were learning things that they wanted you to be prepared to learn in case they needed you. But what happened was, here it is, 1966. I'm in college now for 2 years. I'm not exposed to the draft yet because I'm in college and I'm taking ROTC, but then they changed the law. Now that you're in college, doesn't matter. You're going to be drafted. And everybody my age that year, it was a given. I'm going to Vietnam. It was just a given. Everybody's going, either voluntarily or involuntarily. You're going. And so it came to the point where in ROTC, the last 2 years are completely voluntary, but in the sense that you have to sign a contract with the Army. And they say you can stay in school for 2 more years and we won't take you to Vietnam. But after that, when you get your commission as an officer, we own you for 2 years. And when it came my 2 years, after my first voluntary years, 2 years came up, and the people in ROTC wanted me to sign up for those 2 years. And I'm talking to them about that because, I'm going to finish my college degree. And they said, but we got you after 2 years. And I said, yeah, but I want to go to law school too. I need 3 years. And if I sign up and you take me, and I will go to Vietnam, I understand that. If I sign it, I'm going for that. The chances of me, assuming I come home, going to law school after I spend whatever time in Vietnam are slim and none. So I don't want to sign your contract under those conditions. That's what's stopping me. And they said to me, what if we put in your contract that once you graduate from college in 2 years and you get your commission, we won't take you. We'll give you a deferment for 3 years and allow you to go to law school. And as long as you're in law school, we won't touch you. But at the end of 3 years, whether you graduated or not from law school, then we own you. And I said, deal. You got that. So at least I would be in position that if I was lucky enough to come back from Vietnam, I would have my degree as a lawyer. That's when I got lucky, because I graduated from law school in 1972. And in 1972, the Vietnam War was beginning to end. They were bringing troops home. They were having Paris peace talks. And when it came time for me to go, and all the other guys that were ready to go, like it or not, in 1972, they said, nope, we're not taking you. We're bringing people home. We don't want new people in the Army. We're going to put you in a reserve group. Jason, pure, unplanned luck on my part that I didn't go. But my respect for the people that did, because I lived with them. I saw them before they went. I saw them after they went. I saw them during. I was trained by Vietnam veterans. My respect for the people in the armed forces, but especially our Vietnam veterans, is off the charts. Off the charts. I just happened to get lucky, but I'd signed that check like every one of them did to the United States government. Rick Kahdeman, payable to the United States in any amount up to including my life. I gave them that. I just got lucky. They chose not to cash my check. Wow. But I grew up with the beaver, and I got lucky along the way.
Well, that's an amazing story, and I'm glad that I asked the question for you to share a little bit more about your life, because one of the things I love about these interviews is we get to learn about your profession, and we get to learn about what you're doing, and talked a lot about health and wellness, but something that you just glossed right over it, was you had a teacher that just kind of caught your eye, caught your attention, and kind of planted that seed of that passion that would come to be your career. And I just think that that's something that should be noted, for those that are out there that are coaches, or those of you that are teaching, and those of you that are mentors in any way. It just goes to show that it just takes one small seed to make a total difference in someone's life. And that teacher, what was that person for you? And then, of course, a little luck goes a long way, when it comes to your chances of not having to go to Vietnam. That would have been a game changer for sure, I'm sure.
Yeah, it would have been, but that seed that was planted. Thank you for making that point, because it's very, very true. Without that, I have no idea where my life would have been. And you're one of those people, by the way, Jason, because what you do is so valuable. Most people don't appreciate, let alone understand, is how important the aspect of mindset is. There's a whole lot of physical things we can do with our body, but regardless of what we choose to do, whether it's what I do, whether it's you do, or anybody else,
Hmm.
mindset, a positive mindset to be able to be the dominant force in terms of our choices,
Hmm.
how we respond to the world around us. That's the single most important thing, and that's why I appreciate what you do. I want to give it back to you because I haven't personally experienced what you teach and what you train, but I know the people who have, and people in my family, and it's awesome. It really is.
Hmm. Well, thank you for saying that, and again, thanks for being on the show today, and thanks for sharing everything with me. We're right at our time here today. Louisa did want me to ask you about creating the revolving line of credit in our country, and I'm going to go out on a limb, and we're going to talk about the credit of our health. I'm sure what she's talking about. Am I right?
No, she's actually talking about a real thing I did as a lawyer. Um,
Oh, okay.
when I became a lawyer, I graduated from law school in '72. As I mentioned, the Army didn't take me.
Uh
So
huh.
I began my career in 1972. And two and a half years into that career, I took a position with an in-house law group, a business as their in-house legal department in St. Louis, Missouri, of a company that was owned by Citicorp. And we're a nationwide mortgage lending company. And at that time, Citicorp was the largest credit card issuer in the country. And so they were all about credit cards, along with their banking work, but they were big on credit cards. And here they had this company in St. Louis that focused on mortgages. And there was virtually nothing in this country that involved that had to do with second mortgages. They really didn't exist. And
Hmm.
with Citicorp being the major credit card issuer they were, said, we want to create a credit card for home equity. We got a we got all these first mortgages, but there's a whole untapped equity out there, and we want to create a credit card for that. And they pointed at this young lawyer in St. Louis, Missouri, and said, "You're going to be the guy that makes this happen."
Hmm.
And I had to learn all of the banking laws, all of the laws involving lending of any kind, let alone just mortgage lending, and all the state laws involving lending and mortgage lending and real estate. And that forced me to become an expert in all of those areas for me to be able to create the equivalent of a credit card, which was the first revolving home equity line of credit that was created in 1975, 75, 76. And
Wow.
now it's everybody has it, right? That's been around.
Yeah.
So and
Wow.
that really helped me define my success as a lawyer because I was the only one who knew all that stuff. And
Interesting.
so anyway, funny how life works.
Well, just another layer to add to this interview, and just more about you. Like I said just a minute ago, one of the things I love about the interviews is I've known you for years throughout our networking opportunities and through business in the community, but I get to learn a lot more in detail about you just by asking these questions. So it's been a joy having you on today and just sharing your story with everybody. I hope that everybody has enjoyed this. And feel free to comment if you're watching this on the replay sometime later, and I'll make sure that if you have a question that Rick can answer for you, that we get back to you. But Rick, do you want to plug any of your social media, your website, or anything about your company, real quick?
Well, the best thing I can do is to say that Optavia works, and whether you choose to use Luisa and I as your coach to help you identify what your health goals are and match with you a protocol that meets your health circumstances that you have, whether you choose us or any other Optavia coach, all I want to say is Optavia works. It is not the number one doctor recommended health program in the country by accident. It's on purpose because doctors know once they find out. When I get a chance to speak to a doctor, um, one in particular I remember was a cardiologist, and he gave me 20 minutes of his time. And when I got done explaining to him how our program works, the science and evidence behind what we do, he said, "I've been practicing medicine for 20 years. Why am I just hearing about this now?"
Hmm.
And he said, "I want every doctor in this firm to hear about this." And that's how good Optavia is. You may not know it yet. You may think we're just a diet because that's been your exposure so far, but we're much more than that. And if you're going to lose weight, it's the healthiest way to do it.
Excellent. Well, guys, if you want to reach out to Rick through this video, through me, I'll be happy to help you connect or connect, anywhere in the country. I assume that there's going to be a coach in every state around the globe. So if we can help connect you in any way, if this is a goal of yours, please let me know. But for now, guys, just want to thank everybody for watching. And guess what? Tune in again tomorrow because I have one more interview. J.M. Ryerson will be on the show tomorrow. And I'm really excited to have him as an author on our podcast. So tune in tomorrow and ask some questions there. And each and every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific time, tune in and check us out. Couple comments coming out. Second fastest growing company in the world. And you are welcome, Luisa. Thank you. Thanks for watching and thanks for supporting Rick on this today. Rick, thanks again. Appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing you at our next networking breakfast or mixer.
I am too, Jason. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with you. I enjoyed it very much, as I enjoy you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Hey, make it a great day, and we'll see you guys all real soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.